All right, so we're recording. Yay.
Yay!
So just to introduce anyone who is watching, my name is Lisa Danilchuk. This is Jo Tastula, right? How would you pronounce it?
Tastula, yeah,
Properly, right?
Tastula.
Tastula. So we met in teacher training many, many moons ago in Santa Monica. That was what, 2003?
2003, I think, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a good amount of time ago.
Wow, 14 years ago. So, and at the moment, as I'm sure you'll recall, Jo, I was grieving when I was in my teacher training, and Jo has recently, lost both of her parents. And I thought of you, Jo, when one of my students, her mom just got diagnosed with terminal cancer. And so we're just jumping right into the deep stuff here.
Yeah.
So I think for both of us, yoga has been a very profound resource for going through difficult emotions and difficult experiences like loss and things that are, we could definitely call traumatic too. So I just wanted to get on the computer, hear the wonderful sounds of Australia in the background.
That's a crow.
and just see if we can pull together some things that are useful for other people who are going through this.
Yeah.
Because it's just one of those realities of life, right? Everybody dies at some point. And so the longer you live, the more you're going to kind of experience that and have to cope with it. So, yeah, I don't know. Is there anything else you want to say just to introduce yourself or?
No, I think that really covers it. I have been teaching yoga, well, pretty much since our teacher training. I started teaching straight away, so 14 years that must be.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been practicing for 20 years, and I will say that out of that time, the majority of that time, yoga was just a real luxury.
Mm-hmm.
It was something that just made me feel good in my body, and it challenged my mind, and it was really satisfying on that level.
Mm-hmm.
But I never really understood the depth of it because life hadn't presented those opportunities for me up until when my parents both got sick.
Yeah.
So I think that is an interesting thing for people, is that they may have their practice right now and it's just about getting stronger and getting more flexible and learning about themselves and, challenging themselves and all of these things, which is wonderful, which it is. But when things get difficult and when life really erupts, there is things in the practice which can just help you through those times.
Mm-hmm.
And the first thing I would say when, for example, your student who's just had that news about her mother with cancer, definitely I have had this experience with your parents, is that, your parents are they're this world unto themselves that is all you know.
Mm-hmm.
And when that is challenged, it's like the ground underneath your feet is taken away.
Yeah.
And you don't know what is up or down. So one of the things that I found about practice is that I could ground myself again. Is that even though life was changing into this thing that I had no idea how it was going to turn out or what it would be, I could get this sense of the ground being underneath me.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other thing is that with all of the emotions swirling around and a lot of them so difficult to sit with, yoga gave you a sense of being centered as well and being able to just sit in that storm.
Yeah.
So those are the two real concrete things that I remember clinging to my practice for, is that sense of just being grounded and being able to hold my center as things were swirling around like a tornado.
Mm-hmm.
And then this is extremely personal as well, but I did find that I really resonated with the spiritual aspect of yoga.
Yeah.
And that, that sense of oneness that everything comes back to in yoga philosophy,
Mm-hmm.
in that, we live in this dualistic world here, our reality on earth, but beyond that, there is a sense of just one pervading energy that runs through everything. And
Mm-hmm.
I definitely had that experience with my mom, is that even when she passed away, her love didn't pass away.
Right.
Her love didn't change at all. And in fact, it got stronger.
Yep.
And all of a sudden, that just brought new light to the mantras and to the chants of the goddess. And I could feel that love, the bhakti, they call it in yoga, the love. I could feel that in
Yeah.
her spirit. And so, yeah, those are just my real practical experiences of going from a feel good yogi to like, my life depends on this. I really need some help, yogi, And the great thing is that it was all in my practice. I just, it was there to be found.
Mm-hmm. And that you had such a foundation and relationship to your practice already.
That helps.
Yeah.
That really helps. And I do think of that. I do think of like what that must have been like to be going through that and try to instill a practice as well. That would be very hard.
Yeah.
That would add another layer onto it.
Yeah.
But I was very conscious at that time of what I wanted to do to relieve myself of stress. So I was very conscious of when I ate.
Mm-hmm.
I was very conscious of, what I did to relax my mind, because I didn't want to do anything injurious to myself.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't want to, self-medicate, let's say. I really wanted to be present and to do things that were good for myself. So it was a very nurturing time, as much as it could be.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I think that wisdom came again from the yoga practice.
Yeah.
And came from probably, those experiences in adolescence and early adulthood of sort of spiraling out of control.
Mm-hmm.
So I knew that didn't work. I
Right.
knew that was not a viable option.
Right.
So my only other option was to sort of like not spiral out of control, but to come into alignment.
Mm-hmm.
And I also want to say that my yoga practice was not anything elaborate or complicated.
Mm-hmm.
I actually stopped practicing asana for the most part.
Mm-hmm.
And it just became about sitting,
Yep.
getting grounded, getting centered, and mantra. I
Yeah.
really started to, I would play mantra, out loud in the house, so that it would just always bring me back to that sense of like, there's something greater here than myself and what my fear is presenting to me.
Mm-hmm.
And keeping myself uplifted and inspired by that. So it was just as basic as that. That was my yoga practice of just sitting, getting centered, being present
Mm-hmm.
with my mother. One thing about being with someone when they're dying is that sometimes you can sit in the fear of them dying and you're not actually present with them.
Right.
And so that realization of, okay, they may be dying, but they're here right now.
Yeah, that's a tough one.
They're available to me right now. I can hug her right now. I can tell her what I want to tell her right now.
Yep.
And that's some people don't get that time.
Yeah.
So if you can have that awakening thought of like, okay, this is our time together, this is our lifetime, and to really use that presently, that's a really wonderful gift.
Absolutely.
And there is way to work with that fear, so it's not debilitating.
Yeah.
There's a way to just to be okay that you're in fear, not have to change it.
Right. Yeah, I'm glad you said that. I think so much of the time, especially with loss or impending loss or fear of loss, there is this, wanting to either change the situation or how you feel, or wanting to try to control it, right? Whether through action, and sometimes that desire for action will help us find healing remedies that are available, but sometimes it's spinning wheels and sort of wasting the time that we do have in efforts to keep along. Right? And there are a lot of medical discussions around end of life in that way, but just accepting like this is scary. It's not just sad, it's also, in terms of parents in particular, and I think for me even sibling, it just turns your world inside out or upside down. You're like, wait, this post, this like foundational piece of my world fell out from under me, so now what's there?
Yeah. I had that experience, and it was as though my parents had put this protective bubble around me, and what I viewed life as was all through the lens of this protective bubble, and I didn't even realize it. I didn't even appreciate it. I didn't even realize it. And although I thought I was being brave out there in the world, it was all in this protective bubble. And with both of them now gone and that bubble burst, the world seems so much bigger. And I can see them now for just the people that they were, not these immortal beings that I had made them out to be in my mind. They're just people who had faults and who just tried to work it out. And I sort of, on the other side of that, I've really got an insight to them as people, not as just my parents. But yes, I do agree. There's a complete restructuring of your life, and you sort of have to start again, in a sense of building that foundation up and feeling that sense of surety under your feet, and getting centered and present.
The three things that you're mentioning are all, I talk to a lot of people about different types of trauma and yoga, and those are themes that I think are just so consistent, whether someone's, has a history of trauma and is in prison, or is, even just had something scary like an earthquake or a natural disaster. It's like that grounding and centering and being with what's actually happening now. That those are challenging, and those are the benefits too. When you get even a hint of each of those, it's like, okay, I know where the floor is, I know where I am, I know what time it is, right? And I can engage in some way with what's in front of me right now. Like that, it sounds so simple, but I think when your world's just been turned upside down for whatever reason, those are things we need.
Absolutely. The fact that I could be present through those most difficult times where I wanted to run or wanted it to all go away, they have been the biggest and most enduring gifts that I've received, and teachers up to date as those moments that I've been able to spend being really present when it was most difficult. So that is, I mean, that's the paradox of life, isn't it? Is that there's pain and there's ecstasy, and there's sort of two sides of the same coin. They're never far away from each other, and without one, you can't have the other.
Mm-hmm.
And even in times where you are most scared and fearful and don't know what to do, and you know, they can be some of the most profound times in your life that you will look back on and just really think, wow, that was amazing. That was an amazing thing to witness. You know, there's what I also think of, and it's sort of similar with childbirth actually, is that you sort of come out through the other end of that a different person.
Mm-hmm.
It's like an initiation of sorts.
Right.
And the old you, that naive and innocent you sort of have passed through that, and there's a new version of yourself. And it's like an old tree that has growth rings, you know, all of these experience, these growth rings of wisdom, and they're just an inevitable part of life, but I don't think something that just needs to be grinned and bared. I think there's beauty in that. There's beauty in it all,
Mm-hmm.
as sad and as scary as it is.
Right.
And with presence, you can see that. With presence, you can witness that.
Yeah. And be with the difficulty and the beauty, right?
Yes, that's right.
Yeah, I mean, I remember being in teacher training. You know, my brother passed in 2002, and our training, I think, started on the 1-year anniversary, and I had never experienced an anniversary of losing someone at all, let alone someone that close. And I don't know if you remember this, but the first night of our teacher training, I was just in the back room sobbing the whole time.
I don't remember that. I'm sorry.
No, it's fine. I was probably embarrassed about it at the time. Like, what's wrong with me? Why can't I just go in there?
Yeah.
And I think it was like intros, and it was one of those Friday evening, you know, intros.
Yeah.
By the end, I finally came in and, you know, got enough breath to, this is my name.
Yeah. Yeah.
But there's, I think, you just feel so raw, right? And sometimes I even miss that raw feeling, because there is so much pain. And I think at any point, those of us that are feeling that would say it sucks, and if we could just sort of healthily make it go away, we probably would. But there's also there's just so much openness, I think, that goes with that.
Yeah, that's a really beautiful way to put it. That's so true. It's like you've been ripped open.
Yeah.
And everyone else who is feeling pain in the world, you can really identify with that, really, from a compassionate, humane level.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Absolutely. You know, you mentioned this a little bit about, you know, your practice being not complicated asana, but meditation and mantra. What do you think changed in terms of, like, what is yoga to you now, after all of these experiences, the loss, the childbirth, all of it?
I think now yoga is a way of me making sense of the world and life.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, I've had these amazing experiences, and you could call them awakenings, I guess. And now the actual yoga practice is sort of like a glue that can keep me coming back to those core teachings that I've discovered through life.
Mm-hmm.
So in one sense, it is something that I can view the world as. You know, it's sort of this this beautiful, intricate tapestry of viewing this life. And then it's also a set of practices, very practical practices, that can keep me tethered to those beliefs, those
Mm-hmm.
teachings, those enlightening states, if you will. I
Mm-hmm.
don't know if I said that very well or not.
No, that
Um,
makes a lot of sense.
yeah, so practice isn't about uh, really doing anything or getting anything or achieving anything.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a sort of a coming back to myself, coming back to what I know, coming back to that, you know, that essence of what I experienced with my mom, of like, oh, the love doesn't die, it just transforms, you know, and to come back to that transformation and that thing that is um, unchanging.
Mm-hmm.
So really that's the practice for me, is to stay connected to that state.
Yeah.
And you can, of course, you know, do that with asana, and you know, if you have the time for a practice like that. But if you don't have the time, then you know, obviously, it's not necessary. You just moments of clarity and presence, which become the yoga practice.
Yeah.
And as many of those as you can manage in a day. You
Yeah.
know.
I think that's great advice for people, like, anyone who's with someone who just got diagnosed or who is in the process of letting go. It's just how many times can you be right now? I mean, we talk a lot about like how we define yoga, and there's different definitions, but one of them, the first part of the Yoga Sutras, the first thread is now is yoga. Now.
Yes, now and now and
And
now.
now. And
Yeah.
and like you said, if we know someone's going to make that transition soon, is going to pass soon, like all of those little moments are gold, and we can absolutely understandably be in the fear of what's it going to be like when they're gone, but right now they're here, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I experienced that with my dad passing. I stayed in hospital with him. I think it was for about 5 days.
Mm-hmm.
And in those 5 days, he couldn't talk, he couldn't communicate, um, but still, it was such a practice to just really be with him fully
Yeah.
in the way that he was able to. And it felt like a lifetime that I had with him there, even though it was only 5 days. And it was such a marathon of a practice to try to stay in that state of presence, you
Yeah.
know, day in, day out through those 5 days.
Yeah.
And it was such a tenderizing of my heart.
Yeah.
to sit and just witness someone else's journey. And again, not try to control it, not try to be the hero, not try to save the day, not try to do anything, just to meet the other person where they're at and be loving presence, be loving awareness.
Yeah.
And that's a full practice in itself.
Absolutely.
That is a full practice.
Absolutely. And I think it's so much of what the other practices are meant to prepare us for, right? I mean,
Yeah, and things have gotten a bit skew with what yoga is, with all of the different varieties of stretchy pants that you can buy, and all of the Instagram posts of flexible bodies and looking great, and and it's yeah, it can get quite confusing about what is this practice really about. But there is a natural learning curve for everyone on this life where when the time comes, you get that lesson.
Yeah.
And then hopefully you will have put in the groundwork so that, when that volcano erupts, that you've got everything in place. You sort of know what to do.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I think kind of by definition, I remember actually one time I visited you in LA. We were having coffee and talking to one of your students after your classes. And we were saying, I think I actually wrote a blog post with this title afterwards. And like, we just need something that teaches us how to swim in a shitstorm.
Yes.
Just how to swim. Just give me the moves. And so with that in mind, if someone is, in any period of a yoga practice, maybe they're new or they're interested or they've been doing it forever, but if they're in the shitstorm or the volcanoes erupt, from a little bit of distance of being right in the thick of it, what are a few things you would say to them in terms of like how to get through the day or what to focus on in their practice? People always ask me like, what's the sequence for trauma? And I'm like, that's not really how it works. I mean, I think we are as a group sort of more interested in asana right now. So people think, do camel pose, am I going to feel better? I'm like, well, maybe, but that really depends.
Yeah.
On a lot of things. So what would you share just from your experience?
I mean, if you're really in the thick of it, I think what you need to just go back to is the basics of breath.
Yeah.
Just remembering that you're breathing, that this is an inhale coming in and your body's receiving, and then this is an exhale moving through you and you're giving back, you're letting go. And so just a practice perhaps of either standing with your feet firmly on the ground or sitting and having both of your feet touching the ground, connecting to the earth beneath you, feeling your spine tall and being present with your breath. And if you are able to do that just for a few breaths, then that will give you so much more ground beneath you, centering, length, connection to life force,
Right.
than anything else I could recommend.
Yeah. It makes me think back to just how asana means seat and how these postures have not been, that we do now and we call yoga, that are yoga, they're an evolution, but they're not really the root of it, right?
No, they're not. And I dare say that if you look at anyone's life when they're really in the thick of it, are they going to stop and do a handstand and then slowly lower down into a crow pose? I don't think so. I think you just there's no space for that. There's no energy from that. All of your energy is put into something else. So that's the thing. This practice is the practice of someone who's really in need is not going to require any energy. It's going to give you energy.
Right.
So yeah, those acrobatic practices are wonderful for what they are, but I imagine totally impractical for what you would need when you're in that shitstorm.
A conversation I had recently with some students of when you're teaching to people who are incarcerated or are really, systemically oppressed, and you say, oh, yoga, that's kind of the miss that you're talking about there. They're going to say, why would a handstand help you right now? What are you talking about? Right?
Right, exactly.
And they could look at a 60-minute asana practice and say, well, how's that going to help? Right? And I think the conversation we were having was, well, if it helps them regulate and feel, then that helps us to actually move through something, right? As gracefully as we can. It's not completely choreographed or graceful the way an asana practice could be.
Yeah.
It's such a resource.
Yeah.
Just to help us be in the shitstorm and ideally even recognize when there are some things that could be helpful around, right? Because if you're breathing and you're present and someone offers support and you have the presence of mind to go, actually, this is what I need, and you can communicate that, that's huge.
Yeah, that is huge. That is huge. If you can ask for help, if you can receive help, that is monumental. Very hard to go through that all on your own. So that is one thing. And then the other thing is that you can just be curious as to what in your practice makes you feel better.
Yeah.
Well, like, does a little, asana practice, does that give you that sense of ground and centering and connection? If so, then do that.
Mm-hmm.
Or if that takes too much of your energy, is it just, getting quiet or mantra or even playing a mantra or, just being curious as to what your own inner process is.
Mm-hmm.
And what is going to help you with those strong emotions pulling through and that fear and all of these new things swirling around, what's going to help you ground down and center, anchor.
Yeah, it's that question, like, what do I need right now?
Yeah.
I need to
Yeah.
my stomach on a bolster for 30 minutes? Do I need to sit quietly and observe my breath?
Right, and there's no right or wrong.
Yeah, exactly. We kind of want there to be at times because it's almost easier if someone can just tell us, like,
yes,
we'll feel better. But I think that's the best support people can give too, is to help people figure that out, just to help them figure out what they need right now. I think that's what I do a lot in the role of a therapist is, well, let's figure out what you need right now and let's try to get that to you.
Yeah, that's often the way, is that with so much uncertainty, you just want someone to tell you something that's certain. Yeah.
5
And
square A, 5 square
that's it.
Is the answer.
Exactly. So again, if you need that, you should, it's a wonderful thing to be able to ask for that.
Mm-hmm.
So I definitely would encourage people to reach out in those moments for any sense of community and support that they can have, because that is without that help, it's really hard.
Mm-hmm.
It's really hard. So that is wonderful. In coming back to the yoga community, is that sense of having a group of people there who can relate to that journey and that depth of what a yoga practice can be. Often the yoga community can be a good community to turn to.
Mm-hmm. And people you had no idea before will start sharing things like, oh, well, when this happened, this really helped me. And when that happened. Mm.
Yeah, yeah. You know, it's an interesting thing when you're going through these really difficult times, is that you'll find that some people don't want to go through those times with you. And it's maybe it scares them too much. It's too confronting, and they actually cannot be there for you. And you know, you hold all this disappointment of people not showing up. But that's you know, that's part of it. That's part of it, is to allow other people to not be there for you, and then just to receive for those people who actually are there for you.
Yeah.
Because that can be a really complicated thing, trying to you know, put a role on someone that they don't want.
Sure.
And I found that definitely more so with my dad. He had Alzheimer's, and there's a lot of stigma around mental health,
Yeah.
and a lot of people didn't want to have anything to do with it. It was just, you know, too hard. And so that I found that very isolating.
Yeah.
And yeah, that list of people to lean on got smaller and smaller, but at the same time, my inner resource got bigger and bigger.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah. So yes, just be those of you who are dealing with something like that, a terminal illness, or, you know, mental illness or something. You know, it's even if people close to you, it's not really affecting them personally. It can be too much.
Yeah.
It can be too much for them.
Yeah.
So, so one thing that I found was really interesting in myself was this sense of having to be strong, you know, and soldier on, and then also remembering that when I didn't need to be strong, I had to put that down.
Yep. Yeah.
And you know, learn to be soft again, and especially for my partner, my beautiful husband, who was there for me the whole way. Had to have moments of presence with him, of softening,
Sure.
and not putting the world on him, of trying to fix it all.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So I went off on a bit of a tangent there of those personal experiences of support around you, but it's interesting. It's interesting when you go through um, those lessons that you get, those teachings that you get from life. It just keeps on. You just keep on getting those little pearls
Mm-hmm. They keep coming.
of wisdom. They just keep coming. You're like, oh, thank you for that one. Oh, thank you. There's another one. Oh, I'm feeling very old and wise now.
Yeah. I mean, I think
Yeah.
everything you're sharing is super relevant, and I'm kind of noticing as I go, like, people who are, I think, are really in this will probably get a, get a lot out of the conversation, because so many people don't want to talk about it too, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I think it's similar in Australia as to the States, in terms of like this pace of life that's fast, and maybe a little more so in the States. I haven't been in Australia for enough time to know, but that sort of accomplishment mentality, and busy, even distracted with technology and other things mentality. And I think that's another thing that's hard about being like this when you're really grieving is like, even someone might shy away because they can't, but they might also just be caught up in these aspects of life that when these things happen, just really don't affect you at all.
Yeah.
Almost like
Yeah.
different, you're in a different rhythm or pace of, or I think for me, I'll just speak for myself, had to be in a different pace of life. You know,
Yeah.
I was still in college. You know, I spread out my classes and took my time and got rid of pretty much everything I was doing except yoga. That was feeding me. It was something.
Mm.
And it kind of met me where I was. And so many other things where you like sacrifice too much, or it would be too much energy for what, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And it's amazing that you were practicing yoga so young.
Right. I mean, I had just found it, what, like 4 years before, right?
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, so I'm glad I had some foundation enough to, you know, to feel it. Like, oh, this is helping. I don't know why, but this is helping.
Right. Right. That's right.
Yeah.
And it's helping in a sustainable way,
Yeah.
because we can get really tripped up with that short term feel good.
Oh,
We
for
think
sure.
it's helping, but in the long term, it's not really.
It's causing more problems.
Causing more problems. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Is there anything else you want to share before we wrap up?
No, I think gosh, I think that's it. I just really do want to say to anyone who's going through those tough times right now, just that my heart is with you, and just to take it easy on yourself, and it doesn't have to be complicated, this practice. Just as simple as being present and breath, and and here's my little daughter delivering my smoothie.
Oh,
So thank you, darling. Thank you so much.
that's awesome. So sweet.
Yeah, and that's it. That's my winning formula.
Yeah.
And then just receive the blessings and the downloads and the awakenings as they come through at this time, which they do,
Mm-hmm.
which they really do. This is a time of growth
Mm-hmm.
and letting go, but transformation.
Right.
So yeah.
Yeah. I would agree with that. There's a lot of um yeah, like you're saying, awakening, or even just a lot of love that comes through at the same time.
Ooh, spiderweb.
Yes, there is.
Yeah.
There is.
Oh, mommy, spiderweb.
Spiderweb.
No,
Well,
Dad.
thank you for taking the time. It's so nice.
Aw.
Um,
Thank you, beautiful friend. It's lovely to talk to you.
you too.
And um,
Let's say
yeah.
goodbye to everyone. If you guys have questions, Joe, what's your website? Do you have something up there?
Yeah, jotastula.com. JO and then TASTULA.com.
I know you've done like some Facebook lives and things. Hi, Soleil, about this, so people can follow you if they want some more depth of yoga practice.
Yeah, for sure. And I've just done a program on Yoga Glow for yoga for difficult emotions, which
Oh,
is the very same thing and it's really just what we've been talking about. Is just whatever emotion you're going through, being able to ground, center, and connect with whatever it is. So
oh, beautiful.
people
I want to send a lot
want
of.
to find that they can.
I've met so
Yeah.
many people like at conferences, and they'll say, "Oh, who would you recommend?" And I'll start saying your name. Oh, I found her on Yoga Glow. She's amazing.
That's awesome.
It happens all the time. I love it.
That's awesome. It's a real gift to be able to connect with people. You know, it doesn't matter what location they're in. They've got their computer, they can connect.
Yeah, exactly.
And thank you, beautiful friend, for all the work that you do. Amazing work in the world, and I love you dearly.
I love you too.
And,
So nice to see you.
Look forward to connecting again soon.
Definitely. Hopefully in Hawaii. Maybe I'll see you there one of these days.
Oh, that would be great. Aloha.
What'd she say?
She said maybe we'll see her in Hawaii.
Aloha.
Aloha.